Welcome to the Inspired Overflow radio show. I'm your host, Minister Casey Starlong, and I thank God that He has led you to the Inspired Overflow radio broadcast on today. Now, Inspired Overflow is a ministry that is designed to equip you with every tool you need to live your best life with Christ. And so a lot of times people may ask and they may say, well, what is Inspired Overflow all about? And I'm here to just let you know that Inspired Overflow, we're here to provide inspiration and encouragement really through the Word of God to just let you know that God is still on the throne. He's still providing miracles and He's still answering the prayers of His people. So on today's broadcast, we're talking about the desire to have children. So if you or perhaps someone you know desires to have a child, but they've been unable to do so, then it's my prayer that today's broadcast is going to bless you to just let you know that God is truly hearing the prayers of His people. And God has all different kinds of ways to bring our prayers into manifestation. So our guest today is Dr. Simckes, who has founded the Fertility Partnership. And it's through this state-of-the-art medical facility that God has used him to help bring children into this world. So without further ado, and I'm going to ask for Hernandez to turn down the music in the background, but without further ado, I'm going to welcome Dr. Simckes to the Inspired Overflow radio show.
I am very blessed to be here. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Casey.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about having you here on the Inspired Overflow radio show. And it wasn't that long ago that I saw you speaking at a Christian women's conference.
Yes.
And you were talking about reproductive health, and I think you might have shared a little bit about your business, the Fertility Partnership, and, that was the Holy Spirit tapping me on my shoulder because you and we met during my political career.
That's right.
And, the Lord had put you on my mind about having you come and just share about your business because I really believe that it may provide an open door for some people to have children who have been encountering some difficulty in that area. So I want you to just tell us a little bit about your medical background and about the Fertility Partnership.
Well, it's a long story, and I know we only have 30 minutes, so I'll try to be short. But, you get a calling. It's not so much a business. You get a calling to help people. I come from a long tradition of that in the family. And I found myself wanting to mix science and service. And I ended up, after studying agriculture briefly, I ended up in medical school. I was led through my studies to fertility. Again, a couple of detours. I started off in trauma surgery, but I ended up going back to something that I did in medical school, which was research in the field of in vitro fertilization and other forms of helping people get pregnant. And what brought me the kind of satisfaction that I was looking for was to help couples, particularly the women, who are suffering with literally a biblical sense of anguish for the desire that we don't have to go far to remember Sarah and Hannah, Rachel, all of our biblical characters who so badly desired children. And but to be able to call them on the phone and say, guess what? That HCG, your blood test came back positive, and to hear the joy and to then see them in the office and do an ultrasound and show them the heartbeat for the first time, I'm the luckiest person in the world. Yeah. And this is what I've chosen to do. I came to St. Louis. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I've lived also many years in Jerusalem. And but I'm here. This is where my career is, and I'm in St. Peter's, and I do my best to help people find ways to get pregnant, using sometimes just the simplest techniques and sometimes the most advanced, literally on the cutting edge.
Awesome. Well, Inspired Overflow listeners, Dr. Simckes, he's here in the studio to answer any questions you may have about fertility, but also about reproductive health as well.
Yes.
Dr. Simckes, we're going to open up our phone lines. And so Inspired Overflow listeners, if you have a call, give us a call at 314-969-6900. Dr. Simckes is here to answer all of your questions. And it looks like we already have a caller. So we'll just go straight to our phone lines right now.
Fine.
Thank you so much for calling into Inspired Overflow. What is your question for Dr. Simckes?
Hi there. I do have a question about menopause and how it affects your sex life. I've started having very painful sex and was told by my current doctor that it was due to thinning of the lining and extreme dryness. He put me on something called S-Trace, but it hasn't really helped. And also, I am still on birth control, the NuvaRing, and so that, and I guess I should give you my age. I'm about 47.
Okay.
So any ideas or advice, I would love to hear it.
Well, first of all, thank you for calling in. So you're 47 years old, and you have the NuvaRing in to keep you from getting pregnant? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not really in menopause just yet. Is that correct? Because the only way to know that you're in menopause is to, I'm assuming you are having regular cycles or you're not having regular cycles?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Well, the cycles could be as a result of the NuvaRing, or, and so what you've painted here is a bit of a confusing picture. So painful intercourse in and of itself, we have to talk about why. I mean, what kind of pain is it caused from? I'm going to be a little bit explicit here.
Burning.
Burning sensation. I see.
Burning at insertion and during, so it's not like hitting the back of my whatever it's called.
Pelvis.
But it's more like the friction.
And he's tested you and made sure there's no infection and you don't have a discharge, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
I've had all that done. Mm-hmm.
Well,
and also, I should say, before, I've only had the NuvaRing in since January, and before that, I had not been on birth control for probably 5 or 6 years.
And you were having regular cycles up until the time when he put the NuvaRing in, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what your doctor told you was that you have something called atrophy, right? The thinning of the walls of the vagina, and the cells in the walls of the vagina respond to estrogen, and that's one of the biggest problems as women age is those cells become the layers. It's a layered membrane. The layers get thinner, and then the nerve endings get more exposed, and it hurts. So he gave you estrogen. Now, there's estrogen in the NuvaRing. I don't know if you knew that, but he's given you even more estrogen. So you're getting kind of dual therapy there. And between the two of them, I would have thought that the lining would have thickened up a bit. So you can a doctor can do an exam and look with a speculum and see, and you can actually visualize that the walls are thin. So my thought is get rid of the NuvaRing. That's the first thought. Because if you are in menopause, then you don't need it, right? And if you're not in menopause, then there's another reason why you're irritated so much. If you're in menopause and your main symptom is not hot flashes, word I would use is systemic, things that the rest of your body, but it's just in the vagina, I would say then use vaginal estrogen. So he gave you estrase cream or he gave you the pill?
The cream, yeah.
Cream. And that's not making it any better?
Not really, no. And it's been probably a couple months, maybe a little longer.
I think it's time to get another opinion and get another examination. There are some other possibilities of things that could be irritating you. But I don't think that atrophy is going to be the answer because you're getting a lot of estrogen there. So there are some other conditions. Some of them are autoimmune. But I think it's kind of long to get into right now.
Amen.
Right.
Would love to talk to you about it more.
Okay.
Awesome,
Okay,
awesome. Well, thank you so much for calling in to the Inspired Overflow radio show. For those of you who have just joined us, we are joined in the studio with Dr. Simckes, who he's the founder of the Fertility Partnership. And so we're talking about women's reproductive health. We're also talking about fertility. So today our broadcast is a little bit different. We're talking about balanced living, how to take very good care of your bodies, and also about the desire to have children. So if you have a question for Dr. Simckes, he's here. He's ready to answer all of your questions regarding reproductive health and fertility. Give us a call at 314-969-6900, and we're going to go to our phone lines. Thank you so much for calling. You are live on the air. What is your question for Dr. Simckes?
Hi, my question is regarding menstrual cycle, and at what point can I really ask my OBGYN doctor about ablation or freezing of the cervix, where it's going to pretty much stop my menstrual cycle? So is it just extremely bad cramps, or is it the heavy bleeding, or does it need to be a combination of both? When would you recommend that, and how would I know that it's right for me?
Well, that's a great question. So endometrial ablation, for people who don't know, is when a doctor will go in and do a procedure where they basically destroy the inside of the uterus with either electricity or heat or even cold. Now they're using radiofrequency, and the idea is that you will no longer have that lining, so you won't have a menstrual cycle. The success rates are pretty good, but they're not 100%. If you look at people who are candidates, to answer your question, are people who have, I would say, menstrual cycles that are bad enough that it interferes with their life. They can't go to work. They're afraid to go to work. They're afraid they're going to bleed through a pad. So how would you know you're a good candidate? An ultrasound is a good choice. You need also to have an endometrial biopsy, because you have to make sure that there's nothing bad, things that are God forbid kind of things. And all that has to be diagnosed by the doctor. And the most important thing I would say is you have to make sure there are no fibroid tumors, or if there are fibroids, because fibroid tumors are one of the big reasons why ablation fails. So if you have fibroids and if they're up inside the cavity, then the ablation will work for just a short time, but in the end, it won't work.
Okay, and just a part B to that question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Would having that procedure done affect a woman's body hormonally, as far as chemicals or anything like that?
You know, that is a better question than you think. The short answer is no, it should not, because the hormones come from the ovaries. But I have seen reports and also personal accounts from patients who have had menstrual headaches and some other symptoms with pregnancy, and once the bleeding comes to an end after the ablation, they report that's gone. So there are some things that are not quite hormones called prostaglandins. So again, that's a long talk. We can share that some other time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, caller, for calling in to the Inspired Overflow radio show. Inspired Overflow listeners, we are joined in the studio with Dr. Simckes with the Fertility Partnership. We're going to go to our next caller who is holding. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your question for Dr. Simckes?
Hi, Dr. Simckes and Casey Star Triplet. My question is sort of in the realm of fertility, but it's specific. My daughter has a question, and she lives out of town, and she's questioning about twins. And, I guess not exactly how that happens, but as her mother, I was born a twin. I had a fraternal twin brother. He passed at 3 months.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And she is wondering what the odds are, or the possibilities, or, is there a way to determine whether or not she might be able to have twins?
Well, thank you so much for that question. It's a great question. So there are, roughly speaking, there are two kinds of twins. And you said fraternal twins. And what that means, using a little bit more biology, is that there were two eggs that left the ovaries at the same time, or close to the same time, that met two different sperm, and two different embryos came along and attached to the wall. In that scenario, you could have one of the twins could be a boy or a girl. So you could end up with two girls, two boys, or one of each. But with identical twins, or if you want to call them maternal twins, identical twins, there was one sperm and one egg. And then that embryo that formed decided to split into two. And so what we know, And to answer your question directly, what the odds are that your daughter would have twins if you were a twin, I would say that the odds are probably somewhat higher than the rest of the population. Generally speaking, when the identical twins is pretty much the same across every population in the world. It runs at a certain percentage. And but the odds that a woman would ovulate 2 eggs at the same time does run in families and does run in certain ethnic groups. There are certain groups, I think in South America, where 1 in 20 deliveries is twins.
Wow.
And in the United States, we used to say it was 1 in 60, but it's much closer now to 1 in 30, 1 in 40 because of all of the fertility drugs that we're doing. We're seeing a lot more twins. But from just a family genetic standpoint, if you were a twin, yes, I would say it is somewhat more likely. I wouldn't give you an exact number, but it means that it's more likely that she will ovulate 2 eggs in a given month.
Awesome.
Okay. And I guess the second part to that is that my daughter now has never had a pregnancy, and she is, she'll be 42 in October, so I think she needs to get busy.
Yeah, well, at age 42, when people show up at 42 in my office, I just take a deep breath and gulp and say, well, let's get to work.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, well, thank you very much,
My
Doctor.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for calling into Inspired Overflow. Dr. Simckes, I want to talk about those types of patients who wait to have children later in life. I posted a quick Facebook post that you were going to be a guest on the show, and a lot of folks who I didn't know, who I guess were your former clients, they chimed in and talked about how you were able to help them have children.
Mm-hmm.
God has blessed you to use the fertility partnership to help folks who thought that it was going to be impossible to have children. If somebody is over the age of 35, I'm 35, I haven't had children yet, what are some things that I need to do right now if I desire to have children?
Great, thank you. I think that you have to be proactive. Mm-hmm. You have to be proactive, and God says, "Be fruitful and multiply." So it's an active process, in my opinion. That's how I interpret that. And so you're right. You have to take some active steps. So if you're age 35 is sort of an age that we have in our heads. That is a time when we have to start hitting the panic button, maybe. But probably it's age 30 is when I would tell people, if you're not planning to have children soon, you should take a few steps. Certainly at age 35. What I would look at are sperm, eggs, can they meet, and can they stick? Those are the four things I look at it. So let's start with it's sperm. If you're a 35-year-old woman, and if you're married, or if you've picked out your future husband, then you may want to have a semen analysis. If you say, well, the wedding's not till next summer, we want to have a year, get to know each other. So next thing you know, you're 37, 38. I would say a semen analysis is really important, because if you find out that the sperm count is low, you may want to rethink the waiting period. Eggs. So at age 35 already, a woman has a 1 in 4 chance of meeting diagnostic criteria. That would mean that she's the diagnosis of diminished ovarian reserve. That's a scientific name. It doesn't mean you can't get pregnant. What it means is that we see her in a group of people who have the biological clock is ticking louder. Mm-hmm. So that's done with ultrasound. So things I would recommend are, number 1, a blood test. And the blood test is AMH, or anti-Mullerian hormone. And then I would recommend an ultrasound to look at her ovaries and what we would call an antral follicle count. Any doctor can, well, not any doctors, a doctor and an ultrasound machine.
Sure.
And then the question is, can they meet? Is there a reason for you to think that you might have a problem? And if so, then you need to maybe, again, not wait 2 years. So if you have a history of fibroid tumors, or if you have a history of maybe an infectious disease at one point in your life that could have injured your tubes. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would do to start off.
I think there are a lot of folks who may be listening to today's broadcast and they hear, oh gosh, I need to do this, I need to do all of that. They think of kind of like that it's so expensive. But when you started the fertility partnership, you said you weren't in it for the money. You wanted to provide an affordable option for your clients. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I've been practicing for a long time, since '93 here in town. And, when I say I'm not in for the money, obviously I want to be able to take care of my family.
Absolutely.
But I thought that I could, a lot of the technology that we have, like, for example, in vitro fertilization, is extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. And I set out to try to figure out a way to make it less expensive. And it's hard to do because it is very expensive. There's some things that are just, and the costs are going up in the lab all the time. But I wanted to make it so that if you absolutely needed IVF, God forbid your tubes are gone or the sperm count is critically low, I wanted to make it so it could be as reasonable as possible, but also that I would have a certain moral strength and authority that I could sit behind the table and look at a couple and tell them, you know what? You need to go this route, even though it's very expensive, and know in my heart that I don't have any incentive.
Sure.
So that was part of. I wanted to build the fertility partnership so I could practice in a way that I wanted, and also help people find other ways, and not just meet and greet people and push them into the more expensive procedures. Find simpler things, like maybe a woman isn't ovulating, or maybe there's a problem with the cervix. So we could then inseminate and et cetera, things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Inspired Overflow listeners, we've had a great conversation thus far with Dr. Simckes, who has founded the Fertility Partnership, and he's stopped by Inspired Overflow to really talk about fertility and women's reproductive issues and reproductive health. We've been taking questions today, and I want to go back to our phone lines to get our callers to make sure that they have time to ask any of their questions. So, caller, thank you so much for calling in to Inspired Overflow. You're live on the air. What is your question for Dr. Simckes?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question, Dr. Simckes, is what would you set an age that might be a cutoff for a woman attempting to have a child? I've known ladies, even at this point, up to late 40s, who still want to have children. Would you set a kind of like a definite, this is really too late to be doing that?
Well, that's a great question, and luckily, the answer doesn't have to come from me. There's an umbrella group called the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, ASRM, and they have ethical guidelines. And what they've said is that we, as fertility doctors, are allowed to help women up until age, hope you're sitting down, age 55. They can become mothers and be the mother of that child. We can actually help a woman get pregnant up till age 60, but from that period from 55 to 60, she would only be a carrier of a baby for someone else. And the concern, of course, is that a baby would be born and it wouldn't be fair to that child because the mom wouldn't live long enough to really impart all the teachings and that she would need to in order to give that child a good chance at life. So, after age 50, I make sure that I have clearance from her primary care physician, that her heart is strong, et cetera. And, but otherwise, up to the oldest woman I've ever helped was 52 years old.
Oh, wow.
She did have, in fact, twins.
Wow.
And was a minister's wife. It's true. And they got great biblical names, and I'll say nothing else so I don't break any rules.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Simckes, we thank you so much for joining us here on the Inspired Overflow radio show. And Inspired Overflow listeners, Dr. Simckes, he's going to join us again next month to talk about reproductive health and to answer your questions in regards to fertility. If you have more questions for Dr. Simckes, make sure you look up his business online at fertilitypartnership.com. And Dr. Simckes, give us the phone number where individuals can call you for more information.
It's 636-441-7770. 636-441-7770. 7770, and I think it's 1-800-BABY-TODAY.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, if you and your spouse, you have questions about fertility or just you want more information, definitely give Dr. Simckes and the great folks at Fertility Partnership a call. We want to also make sure you know about an upcoming event taking place in the Christian community. We want you to mark your calendars for this Thursday, August the 27th, August the 28th, and the 29th, and the 30th. It's the second annual Kingdom Convocation, the Sanctuary Movement. It's called the Gathering of the Glory Carriers. Again, that event is taking place on August the 27th through the 30th, and that's with Elder Gerald Pace and the church, the Sanctuary Movement. So for more information, give them a call at 625-7273, or you can email them at info@thesanctuarymovement.com. It's going to be preaching, teaching, a concert, and it's free. So it starts on Thursday, August the 27th at 7 o'clock p.m. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this. It all takes place at 3833 St. Ferdinand Avenue. So we want to issue a great congratulations to the new ministers that will be ordained there as well. As always, I'm your host, Casey Starlong. I hope that this broadcast has blessed you. Once again, thank you to Dr. Simckes for joining us. And Inspired Overflow listeners, make sure you stay rooted, stay blessed in the word, and then you'll walk in the overflow. Until next week, peace.
This has been the Inspired Overflow Radio Show with your host, Minister Casey Starlong. To support this ministry, visit Inspired Overflow online at www.inspiredoverflow.com and become a power partner today. Your financial support will keep the Inspired Overflow Radio Show on the air. Also, be sure to connect with Inspired Overflow through our Facebook fan page. Until next week, stay inspired, empowered, and focused on the purpose God has for you.